Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We got a special guest today. Do you have three names? Are you a serial killer?
I am a serial killer. No,
Jeremy
I'm
Ryan
kidding.
Slate. You've been on before. Been on Drinking Bros as well.
Yeah.
How would you talk about Rome a lot, and you have some education in the matter.
Yeah.
But how would you describe yourself?
Yeah, so I have a company called Command Your Brand, and we're a PR agency that books podcasts. But if I looked at my expertise, it's kind of weird, man, because my master's going way back, I studied why people worship the first Roman Emperor Augustus. I kind of looked into a lot of the propaganda and tools he used. And then I've always been somebody that's been really interested in what's called the 3rd century crisis. So I've put a lot of attention on the mid to late 3rd century because I think everybody looks at either the fall of the Republic or the fall of the Roman Empire. They don't look at actually what led to the fall of the Roman Empire, which in my opinion is really important. And my wife just likes to say that I'm more of the Rain Man of Rome, I guess you could say in a lot of ways. I know a lot of dates and stuff that people just shouldn't know.
So people worship Augustus because he declared his uncle God, therefore making him the son of God, right? I mean, that's not the only reason.
That's one of the things.
That was a very clever move on his part, I think.
Well, it's clever, but like he's a lot of like word salads, if that makes sense. So if you look at kind of when Augustus takes over in the 1st century, people had been living through civil war for 100 years. You know, the Roman Revolution is this 133 to 31 BC period where basically nothing seemed correct. This republic is falling down around them, and Augustus basically gives them stability. So understanding that, what he actually does in 27 BC is he says, all right, guys, I've solved the situation. I'm going to retire. And people actually demand that he doesn't leave power. And that's where they come up with the name Augustus, and he starts to create these other titles. He takes the military title of Imperator, which is where the title emperor comes from.
Right.
He also takes this brand new title. In the Roman Senate, there was this position called the Princeps Senatus, which would have been similar to our Speaker of the House.
Right.
So he takes that word Princeps to, be his own title, and that's where we get the word principate from, which is where the word prince comes from. So he kind of does this whole word salad with what it is. And then obviously he's going to tie himself to things like, there's a comet that goes across the sky the day they celebrate the death of Caesar. And obviously that's his father going to heaven. So there's things like that, but there's also, he's very meticulous in understanding how to handle his own image and handle the titles around it, because that's really what he manages to do. Romans really didn't like the ideas of kings. So to call himself a king, which is one of the things they didn't like Caesar for,
right.
Not that he did, but Mark Antony kind of, made it look like it could be thus, right? He tries to crown Caesar at one point. So that's an indicator that they're not super happy with Caesar. So knowing that, and that Romans had actually killed their last king, Tarquin the Proud, he decides he has to do it smarter. And that's where he comes up with these different titles. So he takes different Roman offices and combines them. He takes the office of censor, which was responsible for the census, but also restoring moral standards so they could take people in and out of the Senate. He takes the office of tribune, so he has the right to pass bills and veto things. He takes the office of Pontifex Maximus, which is the chief priest of Rome. So he takes all of these titles to himself to create an office that really hasn't existed before.
Yeah, he's pretty sharp.
Yeah.
Pretty sharp guy. And yeah, that whole period, there wasn't much security for Roman citizens. If you think about like from lower class and slave all the way up to the upper class, no one knew who was going to be in charge next. And I think a big part of it also dug into G.K. Chesterton says that men didn't love Rome because she was great. Rome was great because the men had loved her. And a part of that is
that changes dramatically in the late Republic.
Yeah, it does. But in the early part, a lot of it was like, in the same way as in a lot of cultures, the love of Rome or the greatness is categorized by history and society and technological advancement, but also in conquest. And the conquest part, with especially leading into Augustus, with Pompey and Caesar. It's just like, which military dude's gonna make enough money and get enough legions to take this bitch over next?
Yes.
Right. That's kind of what it felt like. And I think a lot of people were people loved Antony early on after in the second triumvirate, but I think again another sharp move by Augustus to paint him as an Egyptian.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
He comes up with this whole idea that he's becoming Eastern and he's going to actually take Rome and leave it to his sons with Cleopatra. He was a master of propaganda, and that's what you have to look at with Augustus. Is he's somebody that, in taking these titles, in the way he handles Antony, and in even the way he handles coinage. There's pictures of himself on all the coins. There's statues of himself at the same age around the empire. So he is very intelligent in how he handles this.
It's a bit of a master class, and even funnier, to be honest. Not funny, I guess, but just maybe ironic that his kids with Cleopatra were still European. Like, she's Ptolemaic. She's not Egyptian.
Well, that's something I think people don't get. Like, have you run into any of those reels where they show Cleopatra as like a black African? And I'm like, no, what are you talking about?
She's Greek, brother.
Right, she's Greek, and obviously a very intermarried with your siblings type of Greek. Sure. So not quite a neighbor you might want to have, but she's Macedonian Greek, honestly, and I think that's something people don't consider. But I want to go back to that point you talked about loving Rome, because I think there's a couple things you can look at which are a big part of that, which people don't typically consider. If you look at what happens after the Punic War, Rome fights so hard to beat Carthage that the society over militarizes. Even their speaker platform, like the lectern someone would speak from, it picks up the name rostrum, which comes from the word rostra, and a rostra was actually the front part of a boat, because they would use the boats to slam into each other. So they would take the speaker's platform, they'd actually put the front of all the Punic War boats that had been destroyed. So the speaker's platform is now called a rostrum, because it's become this place to put all these front of these boats. And if you look at that, the entire society changes to feed this war, because there are 3 separate wars in that period. But then if you want to go further, you could look at Gaius Marius as a big part of this. I don't know how much you know about Gaius Marius, but very often he's called the second founder of Rome, because he actually takes a lot of the Latins living around Rome and he helps them to get citizenship. But the thing he also does is he's the biggest military reformer of Rome. Before Marius, most soldiers were people that had enough money and cared enough about their country to fight. Marius is the one that actually creates the professional class of soldier. He's also responsible for creating the Roman standard. So if you want to look at kind of...
when you say the Roman standard, you mean like
Caesar's
the eagle? Yeah.
The eagle. So if you want to look at Marius... and he dies somewhere around, I'm going offhand on this, somewhere around like 85 BC or somewhere around there. But he doesn't get along very much with Sulla. So it's actually the war between Sulla and Marius that kind of creates this environment for Caesar to walk into. But if you want to look at Marius, that's the major departure from, men loving Rome, as you talked about with Chesterton, because now it's men start loving their general. And that's why Pompey's able to do a lot of what he's able to do, and Caesar's able to do a lot of what he's able to do.
I mean, Pompey was a pleb. That's the unique thing there. It's like, if you were able to, because Caesar, for all of his, I guess, appeal to the lower class, was still born in the purple.
He was broke his entire life, though. He was broke his entire life. He was in
debt, but so was Thomas Jefferson. Right?
Sure, yeah.
And died deeply in debt, which is kind of the reason that I wanted to speak with you today, not about Thomas Jefferson specifically, but about the string of principles and ideas that connect Rome to America. Because everybody's on this, like, America's the new Roman Republic, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Most of those people have no idea.
I think we're the new empire, if you want to go that way.
The empire. I mean, yeah. That's what people say, the Roman Empire. I think most of the people that say that don't know they don't know shit about Rome.
Sure.
Because people do look in, like, the 4th century, and then later on with the Byzantines as the fall of obviously the fall of the Republic, and then the fall of the Empire twice maybe. But the underlying features of that are something that are pretty similar to today.
Mm-hmm.
Currency manipulation through debt,
Sure.
and allowing foreign people to come in and take industry, right, are very similar things.
Yes.
So as foreign folk, Germanic tribes in this case, Goths, Visigoths, etc., come into Rome, start taking jobs, and then start wanting representation, and then start taking part in Senate, and then our Senate.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that sounds shockingly similar to what's happening today.
Yeah. Well, you could look at like Ilhan Omar and a lot of these other people that were, go to Dearborn, Michigan and see how that works out for you,
Yeah. And we're talking about a culture, by the way. I mean, we're recording our new show actually early tomorrow, but we're recording our new show tomorrow. And one of the stories is case after case after case of Muslims either in Muslim countries or immigrants to Western countries who are honor killing, raping, and getting away with it with impunity, essentially, because that's the culture.
Yes.
Right? It's like, no, like a state, as it were, that doesn't protect its women and girls doesn't deserve to exist. And that's something that I'm going to fucking die on. That's a hill I think is worth dying on. You've got a daughter now, so you know that's a hill worth dying on.
Well, I have three very intense daughters.
Or three, yeah.
But that's a really good point. I was just talking to Sam Tripoli about this last week, and if you look at kind of decline of empires and what that looks like, because we were talking a lot about what's happening in the UK right now. I don't know if you've paid attention to how insane things have been in the UK right now. It's barely recognizable, as being British. And if you look at late stage empires, that is one of the biggest things you see is a loss of identity, right? And in the news, if you say anything about your identity, you're a racist and you're a bigot and you're this and you're that. But identity does matter when you have a civilization or when you have a country.
Yeah.
And that is what a late stage empire looks like. You cannot identify what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of video on the internets the last couple of weeks of people in England putting up English flags and painting them on things as a subversive act. If you are using your own flag in public and that's a subversive act in your own country, you might be fucked already, right? I mean, that I don't know that you can come back with that against that rather without some kind of armed conflict.
Right.
Like historically, like we're in a new age now or whatever, but historically speaking, that's always had to end in war every single time, right?
Well, people always think they're in a new age. I think you could always say that, right? We're
not savages anymore.
Right. Like, you look at how, the British handled when they came to America, or you look at all these different places throughout history. Somebody always thought they were in this new enlightened age.
Yeah, and we're not. As a matter of fact, here's how you can tell we're not. We still reach into antiquity for wisdom, and it's not just us. Our founders did it as well.
Yes.
Which again is one of the reasons I wanted you to come here today.
Yeah. Sorry, I've been kind of pulling you off all over the place.
No, it's this is all good backstory. Which, by the way, is for all you autists out there. I think the last king was killed by one of Brutus's ancestors, right?
That's correct.
Allegedly.
So Brutus's family, they call the clan the Bruti. It was the name that would often be used. So when you look at there's this final king, Tarquin the Proud, and if you look at the history on it, once again, the 7 kings of Rome, we don't know if they even existed, but the least likely to exist was likely the first one, Romulus, because one of my favorite historians, a woman named Mary Beard, calls him Mr. Rome, right? He's this person that they don't know how to attribute all these things, so they come up with this Romulus character. Yeah. But the last king, Tarquin the Proud, he's kicked out of the city of Rome. The thing we don't know is if he's ever eventually killed or not. There's different sources that don't agree on what actually happens to Tarquin the Proud. But the family that does this is the Brutus family, or the Bruti clan. And Brutus is actually called the first consul. He's considered to be the first consul of Rome. So you have to understand in Rome how important the culture of your ancestors is. Yeah. I don't think that's something, and it's something our founding fathers would have understood, but I don't think that's something that's understood as well in America now, because it's kind of this, I don't know, rebelling against whatever your family did or said or whatever it might have been. But in that culture, it was really important, and it was almost seen as a mission. So the last king being kicked out by the Bruti matters to Marcus Junius Brutus, who's one of the assassins of Caesar. Right. Because to him, he would have seen it as his duty to end a possible king because his family had been the first one to be a consul of Rome.
Right. Yeah, this is something that I think is of all the things about Roman culture that you can do with and do without. I think obviously, there are some things we could do without.
Sure.
But
we don't have to look at bird signs to decide what to do. I think we could just figure it out.
Or chicken guts on the fucking whatever. I mean, I think we can probably do without that.
Or I don't know if you're familiar with the cult of Mithras.
Mithras?
So they would put a bull on top of a grate, cut it, and then bathe in the blood.
That's where the Christian religion took that, the blood of the lamb. That's where that comes from, the purification ritual of blood and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff we can take, obviously, and we do. The foundation of American law is the Roman legal system.
Yes,
for the most part, it is not like I am a fan of the broader European Christian culture because it is a parallel to the liberty movement in the West, and there's no question about that. But the idea that our legal system came forth from Christianity is nonsense, right? It existed
well before that.
And that's not
Christianity.
That's not a dig on Christianity. That's just they co-opt everything, right?
Well, they took a lot of the words that are used in Christianity for like organization are taken from Diocletian, right? The word diocese or the word vicar. So it is a lot of borrowed terminology.
I mean, even the word pontifex came from Augustus.
Pontifex Maximus,
technically, right? Or not from Augustus,
but the chief priest of Rome.
Yeah, he's the one that kind of made it.
Caesar had also held that office, Julius Caesar.
Yeah, but I don't think before the two of them, the person holding that office was the effective emperor, which became the case under the Holy Roman See, right?
Right, that's correct. So that post would have been a non like government leadership post. It was more of a religious post.
But there is, again, we get a lot of stuff, and I want to start with Cicero because you mentioned it before the show, but the most documented writer, partly because of the time period, also because the motherfucker liked to write, I guess.
Well, and he also liked to talk about himself a lot.
He did indeed. But these ideas that came from him that you see quoted later on by the founders, like in the Declaration of Independence, the idea of natural rights from the creator or God or the universe or whatever is from De Republica, right? It's from Cicero.
Yes.
That's where that idea originated from, not from Christianity,
That's
by
correct.
the way. Which, again, is not a dig on Christianity.
No, it's a lot of borrowed culture.
Yeah, they took the best parts out of that and made it part of their culture, which is
Correct.
the fucking smart move, right? That's what we should be doing right now, as a matter of fact. Instead of people that, like the Protestant Reformation did not intend to upend Christianity. It intended to redirect it back to where it was supposed to be, right?
Correct.
Like, all this stuff that you're doing and saying that people must do, otherwise they can't go to heaven, that's not in the book. So what the fuck are you talking about?
And that's a real struggle too, because my undergrad, so I was a double major in Catholic theology and then Jewish tradition, just because somebody's always been interested in religion. And that's the tough thing that I've always struggled with, is talking about the medieval papacy, because if you're looking at what Martin Luther was coming up against, he's looking at the idea of indulgences. He's looking which indulgences was a fee that you would pay to have your sins removed. He's looking
as soon as the copper in the well rings, the soul from purgatory springs, I believe is the phrase.
I don't know offhand, but
it's not great.
But
Saint Ignatius, I think, wrote that. If I'm not
right,
mistaken.
And you look at as well something that's not spoken about a lot as well, the Albigensian Crusade. The Albigensian Crusade is, I think it's around, it's the 1200s to the 1300s. It's somewhere around there. But in southern France, the Pope kills upwards of 1 million people. So you have to look at what Martin Luther was responding to. He saw these things and said, what we believe is good, and the ideas we believe is good, but these things aren't so good. They're very political actions. They're very militaristic actions.
Yeah. Back to Cicero, he says...
Yeah, sorry.
No. These are, I think, all the surrounding information is part of tying the string from there to here, because all this stuff is in the middle of it, including the fucking levelers and all these other groups of people who wrote about liberty and independence. But in, in De Republica, Cicero says, true law is right reason and agreement with nature. It is of universal application, unchanging, and everlasting. And I don't know if that in some way was a reference to Organon by Aristotle, the universal affirmatives and stuff, or not. I mean, maybe, who knows? He's a pretty learned guy, but this is the first time from a legal scholar, I guess if you want to call him that you see that idea of natural law being the foundation of the legal system, right?
Yes.
I don't remember, like Organon talks about it to some degree but it's not talking about the law. It's just talking about dialectics, like how to argue and shit.
Yes.
This is somebody who is heavily invested in the legal system saying law is natural and it has universal application for the first time in human history, so far as I can tell.
Well, you also look at the Roman theory of government too, which I think is a big thing that our founders were looking at. Is first of all, Romans didn't like, and this comes back from the idea of hating kingship. They didn't like one executive because
they have the consul and proconsul, right?
Well, they would have, so the way it would work is every year they would have two consuls, and their year system until Caesar is a little weird. So the way they would mark the years is by the consulship of this person and that person.
And we had to piece that timeline together after the fact.
Right. So a lot of the dates you're getting are actually created kind of post-text, and they add the Gregorian calendar to it to figure it out. But there's not a really legit good calendar that works until Caesar. That's one of the big reforms he would make. Every few years, they'd be off anywhere from 30 to 90 days. And they'd have to add months to kind of figure out where they were, and the seasons would be really off.
Leap month.
Right, leap month, right? Instead of leap day. So, but if you look at their theory of government, they didn't want one person to hold absolute power, but they did believe in the idea of having executive. A proconsul was someone after their consulship that held a governorship outside of Rome. So you look at Caesar when he's in Gaul, he's a proconsul. And it was very often someone would want to get one of these because they were extremely valuable. You could make a lot of money because you could kind of steal, and it was somewhat legal. But if you look at the other parts of the Roman theory on government, is you also have the Senate, right? And this is what our founders are looking at when they're putting this together. I think things might have worked better if they did the executive branch a little bit differently, because it has a tendency to kind of centralize when you have one person there.
Yeah.
And it changed often. Consuls changed every year. Now, I don't know if that works in the modern world, because by the time you understand what's going on, you're out of power.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea of shared executive power, because one person can't become tyrannical.
Yeah. Well, that's the next point. So republicanism and a mixed government, what Montesquieu would go on to call a separation of powers, right? But it works in both directions. So Madison writes about this in the Federalist Papers again, about wanting to prevent tyranny of minority and majority. The latter being just a pure democracy where 51% of the people can tell 49 what to do. We don't want that either. And Cicero was very, very fond of these systems and talked about them a lot, about having a mixed system of a monarchy, which are the consuls, the Senate, which is the aristocracy, and then the assemblies of the plebs and whatnot. I mean, what do they call it? Not governors. What were they called?
Which
the
tribunes?
No. The people who were in charge of small enclaves inside of the city. It's not like a
I don't know the word offhand.
I can't think of the word,
because I'm thinking more of the levels on the Cursus Honorum, or the kind of the levels of office you go through. So you'd have a quaestor, you'd have a praetor.
I guess a magistrate would be one.
Well, magistrate, would be a local legal officer.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking of, magistrate. But he liked this idea of having insulation from tyranny on both ends. And we think about that as well in our system of government. Like, why can't we just do this? I'm like, well, it's set up that way for a reason.
Right.
The problem
But if you even look at, because I'm trying to remember which book it was that Glenn Beck wrote about this. I think it was his book about the Great Reset. He had done it a couple of years ago. And he talks about, if you look at one of the things that Washington recommended, he wanted congressional representation to be smaller, to be representing smaller groups, right? So the actual number of people we have in Washington now would be substantially larger.
Right.
But the reason for that would be they wouldn't agree on a lot of things, right? And more people would be spoken for. And we don't really have that. We've lost representation a lot of the ways.
Yeah. We also lost it when we changed the way that the Senate gets elected.
Well, that's correct, too.
Which is not great. But
Well, they were trying to solve a problem, though, too, which you have to understand. Is this, the problem they were having is the governor owed somebody money or whatever it might be, so he would name somebody to make sure the state legislature would name that person senator. So I think the problem was you have to solve the corruption problem, not change the purpose of what it is.
Yeah, you can solve a corruption problem by shooting people in the face, in my estimation. But in the U.S., we made, like, our biggest mistake, I think, is allowing this unelected class of bureaucrats to gain immense power. It was not a very good idea.
Well, and also, too, we were talking about immigration earlier. I think, and is it Nevada that's having an issue right now with their Secretary of State because she has dual citizenship? And
And was it the Secretary of State or the AG?
It was one of the two. I don't remember offhand, but like the thing you have to consider, and I don't know why people don't think about this, is if you were going to hold any position in American government, you should not allowed to be a dual citizen because you don't have loyalty to that government. You know, you want to.
I don't think you should even be able to.
Get a government job.
Hold a bureaucratic office.
Right.
Yeah, there's no way.
Like, you shouldn't be able to get a government job.
Yeah. That's insane to me. And it's, you know, there's an infiltration that happens in every society. And it's not even necessarily like bad actors. It's people who live in shitholes and want to come here. The problem is, it's like,
they bring the shithole with them.
Yeah, you got to wash that shit off you before you come into my house, my friend.
Yeah.
One of the other things, this will date this episode a little bit, but Trump is trying to like imprison people for burning the flag and shit like that, which is absolute nonsense.
I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't agree with that.
No, that's
because it's free speech. It's First Amendment.
Absolutely.
Now, do I think people should be doing it? No, but I still think you have the freedom of speech to do it.
Yeah, I find it disgusting, and if somebody did it in my presence, I would stop them and face the consequences of that. However, that's unacceptable for the government to get involved, just as much as it is unacceptable for governments to get involved in people burning pride flags and shit like that. I don't fucking care. That's
correct.
Nothing. That flag stands for nothing.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like, fuck you. It's not our country. But one of the reasons he gave for doing this was reinstituting national pride and
you can't force people to have national pride.
No, you can't.
Though.
National pride is about identity, and
Cicero
knew that as well. He said the good of the people is the highest law. And if you read through some of the other writings, it's like a republic only survives if citizens and leaders act with virtue. That is to say, for the common good over personal gain. And people tend to do that when they feel like their virtue is rewarded with loyalty from the government, right?
Yes.
You see this all the time. You see it with the American public, even when the government's fucked up, because when a community gets hit with a disaster of some sort or whatever it happens to be, nobody's more generous, financially speaking, than the American public. People will show up to help, give their time, they'll give their money. When you see even foreign disasters sometimes, Haiti, the, what is it? Tsunamis in Indonesia.
Well, it's not charity if someone else forces you to do it, right?
No, it's
not real.
Yeah, it's theft. So it's like Adams, who it's no surprise that Adams was a fan of Cicero because they were both in love with the sound of their own pens.
Yeah,
and Adams with his voice as well. He stressed when you read about the actual writing of the Declaration of Independence and then his contributions later on, that the Constitution would presuppose a virtuous people, right?
That's correct.
That's got to be that's an idea that was rooted in Cicero's writings that made it all the way to the later 18th century, where people are starting through all of the stuff that happened up until then. That idea kind of stayed like, hey, we need to write this not for the lowest common denominator, but for the best possible outcome.
Correct. Right? Well, that's a very Roman idea, though, because if you look at the Roman Republic didn't have a written constitution because their belief was that men would do things for the good of Rome. And that is something that's going to change in the last 100 years of the Roman Republic. And if you look at even when Lucius Cornelius Sulla becomes dictator from 82 to 78 BC, one of the things he's going to do is he's going to basically neuter an office that's called the tribune, because what the tribune had the power to do was they could pass laws, they could veto laws, but they also had this power called the tribunician power. And the tribunician power allowed them to take things for a vote directly to the people. And the problem was many times, and you kind of have to understand the client system in Rome to kind of fully understand what that was, but every politician or every rich man would have clients or people that owed them things.
Yeah.
And those people wouldn't just owe them things. They would literally show up at their house every day and say, hey, what am I doing today, boss? So if someone
Kind
was
of like
going to...
feudalism, almost.
It's very much like feudalism, if you want to look at it that way. So when a tribune would take a vote to the people, he was very often taking a vote to his clients and to people that would make sure that other people voted for him. So that's why Sulla is actually going to take away that power from tribune of the plebs. It's going to later be restored after his death, and that's one of the things that Julius Caesar will use, one of the things that Augustus will use. The tribunician power is very powerful because it basically takes this idea of involving the populace, and it's kind of almost like really bastardized democracy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and Cicero also talked a lot about cultural prestige, I think is the phrase that I recall from that. And it's like, it matters that people are proud of what we're doing as a country.
That's correct.
You know what I mean? Going to the moon, for example, beating the Russians, winning in the Olympics, all this stuff, technology, social greatness, whatever it happens to be. People in Rome were pretty proud of the fact that they could get clean drinking water, for example. As a matter of fact, weren't shy about taking some of that technology from countries that they had invaded prior and then sharing the technology that they had with countries they were trying to make peace deals with.
That's
it was
correct.
a big part of the fucking culture.
Well, and if you look at why people wanted to be Roman initially, it wasn't to take Rome down, it was to take part in the goodness that it provided them.
Which sounds also very familiar, but all that stuff contributes to national pride, right?
When there's no national pride or national identity anymore, that's when you have a real problem, right? Because what are they fighting for? Well, then it becomes they're fighting for money or power, right? And it becomes no longer because you love your country and want to do something for your country.
Yeah, so that was a big one. That was a big one that, you know, we kind of whiffed on. And I think Rome fell into the same trap. They were like very haughty, like, yeah, this is Rome. And then people would come in. I mean, there were times when I believe was it Augustus that had to ban slavery for some amount of time because there were no jobs for lower class Roman citizens in the city or something. Somebody had to do that.
I don't know. I do know with Augustus, what he was trying to do was kind of reestablish a conservative tradition in Rome because things had tried to change dramatically towards the end. So he starts to he tries to put a lot of attention on marriage and a lot of attention on education and things like that. But at the same time, you have to understand Alex Patkisson, I think you've met Alex before, and I were having a conversation about this. Like, the thing most people don't understand about Rome is the literacy rate's only like 10%. So no matter what, it's still a bit of an oligarchy of the people that have money, right? So it is really not quite what we want to make it out to be.
Yeah. Next, and by the way, George Washington, everybody kind of compares him to Cincinnatus. Yeah. But he was a fan of, obviously, but he was also...
may not have even existed, by the way.
Yeah, right. But it is a good, I guess, allegory for what what a Roman dictator was. Because we have this idea in our head of a dictator being like Pinochet or fucking somebody like that. But in reality, the origins of a dictator were somebody that's like, we've decided collectively that there's a problem.
Correct.
You are the dictator who's going to fix it. You have a 6-month on average period to go fix the aqueducts or whatever the fuck.
Well, the way it would work is you'd have one because Romans did have this idea that it's going to be too hard for two people to solve a problem, right? So the office of consul during that time period wouldn't exist. There would be dictator, but the dictator would still have a colleague, meaning somebody that worked with him. And that person's name is the Magister Equitum, or the Master of Horse. So he's not quite on the dictator's level, but he still has a colleague, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's still not totally unbridled power. And the word dictator actually comes from the idea of just leading by voice, right?
Dictate,
or just
yeah.
by command. And if you look at Cincinnatus, the idea you're supposed to understand from him is that he cared so much about his country that he just solved the situation and went back to farming, right? Because the office was only supposed to last for 6 months, because the Romans were smart enough to realize something that apparently George W. Bush didn't get, and that's that emergencies will go on forever if you keep lengthening them. So it only lasted for 6 months, but that exact power is going to be the power that's going to be abused. You know, Sulla holds it for 4 years. Caesar holds it for 3 or 4 years and is finally named dictator for life right before he dies. So that is something that will be abused when people no longer care about doing something for the sake of their country. But once again, Cincinnatus may or may not have existed, right? So he's this Roman ideal. The word virtus is where we get the word virtue from. It was this idea of manliness as the Romans saw it, but it wasn't manliness from the perspective of, you know, I'm so buff and so smart and everything else. It was, I'm a person that does the right things for my ancestors, for my family, for my country. And, you know, I'm also going to be masculine in a lot of ways.
Yeah, we like the cultures that you see historically, and there are ebbs and flows, obviously, and then sometimes they fall outright. But the way that I've always categorized it or talked about it is they borrow honor from the past. That is to say, my ancestor did this, my ethnicity, my nationality, whatever would contribute to this, and then live their lives in a way that the people that came after them would be able to do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of the standard. You still see it. I guess the latest, probably the latest version of that you would see would be Japanese culture, probably. Sure. That still like takes.
It's a very honor-driven culture.
Yeah. That kind of still takes part in that, and somebody who I think was probably like George Washington gets compared to Cincinnatus, but Cato the Younger might have been the person that he thought about more. You know what I mean?
I'm not a big fan of Cato the Younger, honestly, but it's kind of for different reasons.
Well, so he's like known for being incorruptible, for rigid stoicism and stuff like that, which the Catonians were very flat. There was very little nuance in their ability to think about both the present and the future, to be frank.
But it almost is a show at a certain point. Like, you know what I mean? Like Cato's
like
almost
self-flagellating.
He's like, it's just self-flagellating. Like, look at how virtuous I am. I don't even wear a nice toga like the rest of you. Like, but if you look at,
it's like, put a fucking suit on. It kind of feels like Zelensky a little bit. But.
Well, you could also blame him dramatically for the fall of the Republic, right? Because he tries so hard to stop Caesar that he helps to cause Caesar. He's one of the main people. If you even look at during Caesar's consulship, when he has the consulship in 59 BC, his colleague is a man named Marcus Biblius. And Marcus Biblius is basically just this toady for Cato the Younger. And Cato's entire year and Biblius' entire year is supposed to do the opposite of whatever Caesar does, even if he feels it's right. When they were looking at the land redistributions, in many of writings, Cato thought it was a good idea, but he just couldn't agree with it because Caesar wanted to do with it. And if you look at even when Caesar has the Roman culture, the way it worked, if you want to be voted for office, you had to show up in person to be voted for. Caesar and Cato hadn't gotten along to the point that Cato was looking for ways he could basically go after Caesar legally.
Yeah, and then he was also kind of the, I guess the ringleader in a lot of ways to the opposition, as you say, to Caesar. I don't.
And then when things got tough, he basically knifes himself in the bowels. You know what I mean? So it's like
when during like I don't even know what part of the war that would have been, but
I think it's right before Pharsalus when Pompey is going to be beheaded.
Yeah, that happened in Alexandria, right? Like on the coast or something.
Well, Pharsalus is a city in Greece, and then basically he's going to go to...
I mean Pompey being beheaded. Didn't he get
that happened in Alexandria.
They found him in Alexandria.
Because the Ptolemaic king, who's like a kid at that point in time...
Yeah, he was like 12 or something.
Yeah, they're like kind of a subservient kingdom to Rome at that point in time, and they were a large supplier of their grain. He's like, I know a way I can make Caesar really happy. Let me just cut Pompey's head off.
he doesn't understand Roman culture at all, does he?
No.
But yeah,
no, because Caesar's actually pretty upset about that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of being upset, Brutus wasn't too psyched about the idea of killing Caesar either, right?
No, he wasn't.
Lifelong
because,
friends.
lifelong friends, actually, we're not aware historically. Caesar may or may not have been his father because he was
he was
sleeping,
definitely banging his mom.
He was banging his mom.
Yeah, to be, I think that's a scientific term, actually. I'm not sure. But yeah, he was definitely involved in some way with his mother.
Yeah.
A lot of people believe
but
that
it goes
his
back
real
to
father.
duty, right, and love of country, because he said, as a member of the Brutus family, if this man truly is to become a king, well, I have a duty, even though I don't want to do this, to do this.
Yeah. A lot of the more, I would say, it's from Cato's letters that Trenchard and Gordon published in the UK back in the day. They were using Cato as a pseudonym to write about virtue, right?
Yeah.
But it was a very, a very rigid virtue. And it's really funny to me. This is one of my favorite parts of Rome's influence on the founders of this country, because two of the people that they influenced most were Jefferson and Adams, two guys who started as friends, both extremely rigid in their positions. One on more of the libertarian side, which is if we had gotten the government of Jefferson, would not have existed any longer, right? That's just I think it's a good counterbalance.
The federalism, anti-federalism debate is one of the biggest ones in the formation of the country.
I think the if you want to consider it this way, the push-pull or the gravity versus nuclear fusion of libertarianism and federalism working, like Hamilton versus Jefferson, or even Hamilton versus Adams, works together to balance society pretty decently.
Yeah.
But we do need active people in both of those things that aren't lunatics.
Yeah.
And I think the country in the early days suffered a lot that Adams and Jefferson weren't communicating.
Yeah.
Luckily, John Quincy was great, kind of brought it all back together. But anyways.
But if you look at it too, when you look at kind of like the idea of the Articles of Confederation versus like the Constitution, even a country does need a strong bond in order to do certain things, right? Like if you look at kind of economically, I'm from New Jersey. If our economy had to stand up for, as its own economy on the world scale, it wouldn't do so well, right? Or the state of California, other things as well. California for different reasons, but we have to, for there's certain things that we have to come together with, or we cannot compete on a national scale.
Yeah, for sure. That was Hamilton made a lot of points, some of which were like overreach, but shared culture, shared defense, and shared economy is kind of like a fucking no-brainer, right?
Right, I agree.
He wanted the strong central bank. I disagree with that.
Yeah.
But a currency that's shared. And look at how.
Well, you have to look at what they were doing before that. Like you have to go to each state, and your
piece
money
of
wasn't
fucking
good
gold.
anymore, or you couldn't exchange it.
Those
so
Confederate coins, or not even Confederate, but the Southern wheat penny coins and stuff like that. It's just like all this nonsense.
Well, you couldn't do trade, if you're a country that's tied together, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, and then you can see even after the fact how it affected the U.S.'s position in global trade. Like the petrodollar is one of the reasons that we're so powerful.
Yes.
The idea that other people had to adopt our currency, at least in some transactions. Most business transactions between Japan and foreign countries, or even China to some degree in foreign countries, involve the U.S. dollar for a reason, right?
Right,
And
but then that's also like the thing our government has done is they've looked at that as what that's given them a license to do. And the Romans were the same way, right? Because you look at the Roman coinage mattered so much, but then as its purity dropped, it really didn't matter that much.
Yeah, I think you and I discussed this last time, but I don't want to get into it too much. But essentially,
sorry, I can always pull people that way.
Something that you're super informed and nerdy on is that 3rd century fall where they continued to recall currency, melt it down, add iron, send it back out with like a little bit less silver, a little bit less gold, a little bit less copper, so on and so forth.
Which, by the way,
that's just inflation. Right?
I just interviewed an ancient coins expert, by the way. I'll have to introduce you to him. Super interesting conversation around that, because it is, if you look at not having value in your coinage, it's something we're going at a very high rate of speed. To Romans, it's just more real because you're actually physically holding a coin. For us, we're so detached from money.
Yeah, it's if it becomes fake for sure.
Yeah, I would say so.
Which is weird.
It's a fiat system. I would say so.
Yeah, and it's, again, back to the point. It's no surprise that people like Jefferson and Adams were drawn to Cato because of the rigidness of his belief system. And I also think in the same way that the reason I brought him up is because you can see how Cato negatively impacted Rome, and you can see how Jefferson and Adams, even though they gave us a good bit, negatively impacted the early United States in a huge way because of their intransigence. It's like, you guys, there were bickering and arguments before this country even existed.
Correct.
And that we set it up in a way with a House of Representatives who were supposed to be, I think George Washington called them like children or something, or they were supposed to like bicker like children, and the Senate is supposed to be the upper chamber. And
it's similar to the House of Lords, House of Commons.
Yeah, and say no a lot, right? Like, if you guys can't agree, then we're not even getting involved.
Have you ever watched some of the House of Commons broadcasts?
Awesome.
Dude, they're
awesome.
entertaining.
Less so now than they were before, but back in I used to watch it on C-SPAN in the 90s. I'm like, this is awesome.
Oh, it's some good stuff.
Not as good as
get
Japan,
up and just make
where
fun
they
of
fight
each
each other and shit. But yeah, that was kind of like a big part of our system, was to get these guys in a room and let them disagree as much as possible, because that's what federalism is to some degree. It's like, if you guys can't agree, then it goes back to the states. That's why they wrote the 9th and 10th Amendments of the Constitution, man. It's like the whole way it's supposed to be set up. But
you also have to look at, too, what was happening at that time as well. I think most people don't know that Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon was actually published in 1776. So this was a broader conversation that was happening across the world at this point in time. And you look at what happens later on in France in the 1790s. So this is something that was being had a broader conversation. I think modernly we've lost a lot of that. And I think that is one of the problems as well. Most universities don't have classics programs anymore. Classics is where you would study Rome and Greece and things like that. I know my university, I went to Seton Hall, and they got rid of their graduate program for classics. I don't even know if they have an undergraduate program for classics anymore. So it's, people aren't studying these things, and these are some of the most true things because they've been around so long.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big problem for us that people that don't understand the past are in control of the present and future.
Correct.
That's always going to be a big problem, which leads me to the next guy, Polybius, who was like 2nd century BC Greek historian, but he was around when Greek fell and Rome rose to power.
Yeah, it was after the Macedonian Wars, I think, was it? Yeah. And he's basically a prisoner of war from those, and he becomes like a house slave of a Roman and basically a tutor.
Yeah, and he writes histories, which is, I guess, probably the only current,
Well, you'd have the histories of Livy too, but those were written during the time of Augustus.
Yeah, but they were written later. I mean, the ones that were written during the actual fall of Greece and when Rome took power, in a real way.
Well, the thing you have to understand with Polybius versus Livy too is Livy's writing during the life of Augustus. You don't want to piss off the emperor, right?
No,
so you're not going to get as true as you would from Polybius.
Yeah, and he's also able to categorize what Greece fucked up because there's nobody to offend anymore, I guess, to some degree. At least not for him because he's out of that. But he talked a lot about systems of government rather than just the personalities involved. And I think it was a means of because Greece tried a lot of different shit. Yeah. They tried a direct democracy for like 2 years, and then
Athens basically
fucking stupid.
falls into the tyrants of Athens.
Yeah. They tried a lot of interesting things. Like, whenever people bring up certain things, I'm like, I bet you that this has been tried by Greece at some point, because they tried having a complete legislative body that was unpaid and only rich people could come there. So only rich things got spoken about, right? They're like, well, we can't do that. They tried a direct democracy. They're like, well, people are fucking crazy. We definitely can't do that. Right. They've tried a number of different systems. And Polybius came up with this, what he called a natural cycle or an anacyclosis or something like that. I don't know how to speak Greek, so I'm not going to get anywhere close to that.
Yeah, and I will definitely say this isn't my expertise, but I will do my best.
Well, he says that civilizations go, and this is like, you can read about some of this in what's it called, The Fourth Turning, I think, is a book that kind
and
of
there's actually a new one that came out, by the way, called The Fourth Turning is Here, which I just finished, which is quite interesting.
I haven't read that yet. I'm going to check that out.
So I would definitely check that out.
It's in my list right now, but it goes from monarchy to tyranny, to aristocracy, to oligarchy, to democracy, to true mob rule, and then back to monarchy.
Correct.
Right? That's his pathway. And
Yeah.
I guess we're in the democracy or the oligarchy phase probably right now.
I would say so, yeah, because if you kind of look at where we are, we're to the point where there's even some conservatives out there being like, well, a monarch would be kind of great, it's a little scary in some ways.
The problem that it's true though that probably the best, when it functions properly, probably the best system of government is a benevolent dictator.
I could see that.
However, you have the problem of succession because let's say I think Augustus was.
Well, this is a good point though, because Oren McIntyre was just talking about this on Tucker's podcast. Because if you look at what ends up happening in the Roman Empire, why it changes, a benevolent monarch is kind of the best position to have. But it's when he stops caring about the country he's doing it for and how well it's doing, then you start to have this society kind of fall apart. And that's what we're kind of moving towards.
Yeah, and for every Augustus, you get the next 4.
Yeah.
Which Tiberius doesn't catch too much heat for some reason.
Oh, but he's a creepy dude,
because he
man.
fucked babies.
Yeah, he's if you go to on Capri, he's got a palace.
What did he call them?
Little fishes.
Little fishes. Oh my god.
Where he would swim with like naked children. Yeah.
I would like to kill him. Oh, God.
But that's the problem of succession, right? Because if you look at Augustus's succession, he didn't quite have a plan for it, and every time he tries to name his successor, they die. So he had a lot of Marcus Agrippa that doesn't live long around him. He has the two, was it Marcellus and
Marcellus was like basically his strategist and chief of coin and shit like that, right? I think.
Well, Marcellus, I think, was the son of Agrippa. Is what I'm trying to think of, because there was the two boys that I'm thinking.
Yeah,
of
maybe there was a dude named Marcellus. I think Marcellus that was on his staff in the very early days.
Right, this is a different one I'm thinking of, because he had several different people that were supposed to be the next heir, and then he ends up with Tiberius because everybody's kind of dead at that point.
Yeah.
And that ends up being the same way you get Caligula after Tiberius, and then you get Claudius because he's kind of the last one standing and stuttering in a corner somewhere. So the issue of succession is a big problem in that type of monarchy.
Yeah. These are, I like to have these conversations because there's an intrinsic flaw in every system of government.
Sure, yeah.
And you have to decide if you're going to, if the goal of your system is to minimize bad shit or to maximize the positive. And because, for example, it's a lot easier to remove one person from power than it is 600 or however many are in power right now, federally speaking.
Yeah.
But it's also a lot easier to corrupt one guy who's in power.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier for one guy in power to resist corruption than it is for 600. You know what I mean?
But
or thousands or whatever.
At the same time, though, and you could make the comparison here with Augustus and also with Vespasian. It's kind of the first person in that house that's earned it, right? Because the Julio-Claudians, which is Augustus' family, are the first house, and he's the first of those, so he's the best of those. The next house to rule are the Flavians, which Vespasian is the first of, and he's the best of those, and he's followed by several of the worst of those. Yeah. So it also matters that person in that position, how close are they to earning it, right? And if you look at Bill Clinton, right, like no military service. If you look at George Bush, no military service. So and it's not to say you should have to have military service, but in some ways there's other people before him that were better than them that earned it, right?
Yeah, there's this phrase that James Madison uses in a couple of the Federalist Papers: ambition must be made to counteract ambition.
Yeah.
It's like, but then you get back into the fucking 100-year Civil War of Rome. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Where it's just like one family or another is constantly struggling for power. And we figured that, and this is another thing Polybius talked about the consuls, the Senate, and the assemblies. Again, he mentioned this, which Montesquieu would go on to detail in more modern terms quite well. But the separation of powers and then the return of any kind of disagreed powers back to the state, local, or individual level. That's federalism at its core. We think of federalism as the federal government, people just hear the word and don't know what it means, but it's like the federal government or federal power or the institutions that it represents. But what it really means is that, yes, we've discovered or chosen these couple of things that will exist as a bond at the federal level.
Well, it comes from the word federated, right? Like,
Yes.
a group that comes together for a certain purpose.
But also by choice, right? And we figured that I mean, the 10th Amendment is my second favorite, I guess. The second is obviously my favorite, but as you can see.
I was dying, by the way, when you walked in just holding a rifle. I'm like, oh, that kind of a day.
Where do you live?
I'm in New Jersey. It's kind of, we can't do a lot there. We have reverse castle doctrine where if somebody comes into your house, you have to leave it, so it's a very interesting place to live.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. But yeah, there's like a federation of people that, what we can agree on, we'll agree on. And then if you can't agree on it there, you send it back to the states, which we, by law, we're supposed to do. It doesn't happen very frequently, but that's the way it's supposed to work. If you can't agree at the state level, send it down to the locale, and if they can't agree, then the individual gets to decide. It's a pretty self-explanatory system of government. But again, there's two underpinning things. One is virtue, right? And
which was very important in Rome. The idea of virtue or virtus was next to being, keeping your ancestors happy. It was one of the most important things.
Yeah. And then the other one is, just the protection of the individual from the state, right? Which is why I think we've done the best at it because we have guns.
Sure.
But we're still not doing a great job. And I don't know, I want to talk now a little bit about the thing that we can learn most from Rome, because we've already learned the system of government. We know about separation of power. We know all this stuff.
Well, I think also in separation of powers, though, one thing people don't understand is the Roman Senate didn't have any actual power.
Right.
The Roman Senate, where it comes from, is it was the advisor of the kings. So all it did was make recommendations.
Yeah.
And then it was up to people in actual, magistracies or the tribunes or whoever it was to actually put those things into action.
Yeah.
It was just a discussion place.
They also came up with the electoral college idea back then, which is what you're...
Yeah, the voting blocks as well. And the wealthiest ones held the most voting blocks.
Yeah, imagine that, yeah. It was like 90-10, right?
I don't know if it was that bad, but it was, because...
There was some
Alex
period
can
during
speak about
somebody.
this a bit more than I can, but
I think he's the one that told me that.
Yeah.
But it was only during a certain period. It was 90 aristocracy to 10 pleb.
Well, in the late Republic, it's very much that way, and that's why you get the system you get.
Yeah, and then the idea of the executive being bound by the law, which is something, right? So it took a while. I think the levelers in the agreement of the people technically were the first time to say that the ordinary citizen, not an aristocrat, not a king, not a prince, had rights that were inalienable, including by the king, right? It was the first time that it was limited completely. I guess the Magna Carta limited you couldn't fuck with the barons too much,
right?
But you could still murder any civilian you wanted, right?
Correct, yeah.
So it took a while for that, but even having the executive bound by law was first a Greek, but then a Roman idea. This has existed as long as Western civilization has existed.
That's correct,
this
yeah.
idea. So we've learned a lot from them. One of the things that I don't think we've learned is how important national pride is and how to engender and maintain it. I don't think we've done a very good job at that.
Well, I think that, but honestly, it comes down to a more basic idea than that, and that comes back to, yes, virtue, but more of that Roman ideal of virtus, the word that they would have used, because if you look at, there's a lot of guys now that do have that, right? Like if you look at that, especially kind of in the movement we've seen kind of post-pandemic, we've seen a lot more of that. But I think really we've lost that in society. People that do things for the greater good or for the good of their family or for the good of their group or for the good of their country. That idea of virtue doesn't exist anymore. And I think that's one of the number one things that keeps the system up and keeps the system operating is an idea of real virtue. And I think if we wanted to look at one of the number one ways you could fix America, it's bringing back an ideal of virtue. That does mean being able to survive more off the land. It does mean sometimes doing things for the good of your family and the good of your group that don't always benefit you, right? And we've really lost that.
Yeah, what's that phrase? Societies grow great when men plant trees under which the shade of which they'll never sit.
Correct. And the further they get away from them, the less it matters to them.
Yeah. Yeah, virtus is not virtue in the way that we think of it.
No, it's different.
It's
different.
You said the word manliness, but it's like...
Well, because it comes from the root word is
man,
vir, which
yeah,
means man in Latin.
But it's like wisdom, not being reckless, courage, patience, the stuff that you think...
Education.
That a man should, like being honest, being honorable, conducting public service, and not just public service, but duty as well.
Well, in our modern day, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think virtue has become more associated with courage, and I think we've lost all those other elements.
Yeah, but it's really just what Rome was saying is be a fucking man.
Yes,
simple terms.
Correct.
And what that means to anybody, I guess. Opinions may vary these days, or what even is a man or a woman, but
which is funny, by the way. My kid was reading He Bear, She Bear the other day, the Dr. Seuss book, and it's like, oh, Dr. Seuss knew anyway.
Everybody knew until like 2 minutes ago, but yeah, it's like there's if you look in all these modern men's movements, you can see virtus. It's almost identical. Right?
Well, that's the point I was trying to make. I think it does exist.
Yeah, we're trying, and I think men being the leaders of civilization, which they are. I don't care what you have to say about that, but that is just a fact. It's a very basic thing, to your point from before. Very basic, in the simplest terms. If you want to reduce the functionality of a society all the way down to one thing, it's that.
We'll take away the virtue.
Yeah, when men behave the way that men are supposed to behave, with honor, where they have self-control and discipline, meaning they're not doing stupid shit, but they're also ready for the elements, for war. My friend Carl Higby, the Navy SEAL, he likes to say, hands strong enough to kill a man, but soft enough to hold a baby.
Correct.
Right? It's like you have to be able to do all this: the courage in war, self-control, discipline, being wise and educated and stuff like this. These are, if you want to live in a great country and be proud and fly your flag and be proud of America and all this shit, this is the least you can do. Everything else, being a good father, being a good worker, being a contributor, being a good man in general, springs forth from all these things. If you just reduce your world down to being good at these things, then everything else kind of flows from that.
Well, I think we try to solve our problems too often from too high of a gradient, right?
Or downstream.
Yeah, too far downstream or too high of a gradient.
Always.
When actually what we actually need to solve is a giant undercut. Yeah. And just getting back to that idea.
Yeah, I made that point yesterday about the flag burning shit. It's like, I don't like it either. I hate that shit. It fucking makes me angry.
No, I agree.
You know what I mean? It's like I'm not with that at all. But banning it and imprisoning people is like putting up a fucking a gun-free zone sign. You know what I mean? You've gone as far downstream as possible to try to solve that problem because you're fucking weak. And now, as a result, you've taken the rights away from people who weren't involved in that problem.
Correct.
That is a completely unacceptable way to handle that problem, in my opinion.
Well, and it's, I don't agree with a lot of things he said, but one of the things I like about what Vivek Ramaswamy was talking about is that we did need some sort of service back for every person, whether that's doing more local projects, or whether that's helping more in your community, whether that's military service, but we've lost the idea of service, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the number one things that brings us back to that idea of virtue.
Yeah, I think this is my plan for this, and you can tell you've got 3 girls now. One of them's going to be in school.
She is in school, yeah, the 6-year-old.
She's 6 now.
Yeah.
Shit, damn. So she's in real
She's
school
homeschooled, but she's on a second grade level already.
Of course. So this would be my solution to this, and I think multi-function solution. So right now, you have to, in most high schools in America, you have to take 4 full semesters of some foreign language in high school to graduate. It's a graduation requirement. That's retarded.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think I should go back to what it was. It used to be Latin, And I think if everybody learned Latin, you'd at least be a little bit more intelligent. But anyway, continue.
Well, I think you should move the foreign language stuff back to elementary school where it belongs. When children
I
are
started
actually
in 5th grade. So yeah.
when children are actually capable of learning a new language, nobody remembers. You're an exception because you did it early, but for the vast majority,
Well, I went to
of people,
Catholic school, so it's like you take Latin. That's
yeah,
what
you
do.
have to, yeah. For the vast majority of people that just took a foreign language in high school, they don't know anything.
Correct.
They don't remember any of it. You know what I mean?
No, I agree.
It's a completely wasted venture. So I think you move that back. To me, I think immersion pre-K, K, and on, right? And then, if the kid likes it and picks it up, good for them. Maybe they care, maybe they don't. But you're at least going to get exposed to it. And I wouldn't be opposed to Latin either, because Latin gives you obviously a pathway into all the Latin and Romantic languages. I mean, you're set up pretty well if you just learn a little bit.
Well,
of that
that's for me. I've had a lot less trouble learning new words, right?
Yeah.
Because I kind of recognize the roots already.
The new words are the roots of words is important, but also once you know the root of the word and you know its current meaning, you can track how the meaning has changed over time, which gets you like pretty deep into the history of that. And I think that's a really important thing for a young mind, to be honest. And then for high school, instead of 4 semesters of this thing that's useless for you. I'm not saying that learning a foreign language is useless, but trying to learn it in high school is fucking useless.
Right.
Instead of that, you owe me 4 semesters. You owe your community 4 semesters of public service, or you cannot graduate from high school.
I think public service, but also civics. Like my high school did
we don't
civics.
do that anymore, yeah.
We did civics. So we had 1 semester in understanding how government worked. We had 1 semester in understanding how the electoral system works. So I think both of those things are needed, right?
Yeah,
Service
I think
and understanding how it works.
I'm a big Hanlon's razor guy. Sometimes it's incompetence and not malice, but I think removing civics from school was not incompetence. I think that was done intentionally.
Well, you look in the UK, why can 16-year-olds vote now? Why? Because they're easy to convince to do something for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a problem. But that's how I would fix it, and I think it would be I think that would be pretty successful. You know what I mean?
No, I agree. I think it's we do need to go back to having languages when they're younger. I think Latin when you're younger for everyone makes a ton of sense because you're going to learn any other language you want to do later much easier. But I do think you need service. But I think service, but not without civics, because they need to understand how the system that they live under works.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be great. To be honest, I don't know what – there's probably other classes that you could replace with civics because, I don't – I took a civics class. I think it was in 10th. It was just called government, but it was in 10th grade.
I took it in like 9th or 10th grade.
Yeah,
so
it was good. My basketball coach taught it.
Yeah.
But he was he was an idiot or anything. Fran was his name, I think.
Can you ever trust a guy named Fran?
Well, it's Francis.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So the Pope. So
oh, there we go.
I don't know. I don't really trust popes. But he was great. He was our basketball coach. But I've talked to many people that are younger than me, and sometime within the next couple of years after me is when it started to disappear because I've talked to guys that are close to my age, like 40 and under.
Yeah.
And
I'm 38, so it's like I'm close.
It got like replaced with there's a history class. History and government are not the same thing.
No.
You know what I mean? Like one of them is factual information and the other one is structure. That's not the same thing.
Oh, that's weird.
Well, some of it's factual.
Like postmodern history type stuff.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. But to me, because of the pointed nature of that, it's got to be on purpose. I don't like that either. But
I also hate the theory of history that most schools do, because if you look at the way it's structured, there's most periods of history you're never going to get to, right? Like most, American History 1, American History 2. What do you know? You never get past the 1950s in any American history class you've done. So I think at the same time, the way history is structured is also not structured for people to learn it.
Well, like how would you structure it?
How would I structure it? Well, I think one of the things you have to understand is how the mind develops. And I think a lot of kids aren't really ready for the Greek and Roman stuff until they're a bit older. So I think you kind of start in American history and then go from there. My grammar school was actually really good at it. It did it differently. Like they picked different. So like we did one year that was our state's history. We did another year that was our national history. Another year that was more of a Western civ. So I don't know if that's perfect, but it's a little bit better. And I think honestly, the more philosophical stuff when you're a little bit older, you're going to be more ready for.
That makes sense. Who, if you had to put a finger on it, I guess, who do you think? What do you think the best lesson we could learn from Rome is, and who do you think was the best? Like, if you had to recommend, go look into this dude and what he had to say about government or national pride or even Roman symbolism, right? I mean, that's a part of it too. Is having they created the standard.
Yeah.
I mean, that was for the time. If you're thinking back to that, like stuff that we're trying to figure out right now, that creation of the standard is a pretty serious thing that happened, and it's like, man, these guys were fucking smart.
So honestly, it's tough because you have to look at every Roman writer from a time period they were coming to. There was some purpose they were trying to achieve with what they're doing. Honestly, there's a really great course. I think I actually talked to you about this one by Gregory R. Aldrete from the Great Courses, which is more of like a Roman Civ course. I think, honestly, for most people, just approaching it that way and then kind of filling in the different areas you want to get more on. Because I think that the tough part to say is because every writer has their own thing they're trying to accomplish coming from their time period. I think that's hard kind of in a postscript. So I think kind of getting a wider view of how the civilization functioned, when it went up and when it went down, is going to teach you a bigger lesson. And then you can kind of, if you want to learn more about the 3rd century, go for that. If you want to learn more about the late Republic, go for that.
What was the name of that one?
It's called, I'm trying to remember offhand. It's on Audible, but Gregory Aldrete he's a professor somewhere in the Midwest. Him and I have had some email exchanges. We're going to be doing a podcast soon, but it's called, I think, the Roman Empire or something like that. But it's a great courses.
I'll check it out because
it's really well done.
I go like
Garrett Fagans has a good one too.
The history of ancient Rome,
and he's really funny too. So
yeah, I love Garrett Fagan actually. That one, by the way, the Great Courses has a subscription on Amazon Prime that you can sign up for, and you can actually watch the lectures. I have it too. Yeah, it's like $7 a month. I
did one too. So I've been really recently into the Medici and the Borgia. So I just did a few lectures on that, which are really interesting.
Nice. Yeah, I that one by Garrett Fagan, I go through that entire series every other year. I have a whole list. So.
I love how he describes Roman government too. He describes Roman government like an old man's kitchen. Yeah. The old man knows how everything works, but most people walk into it and be like, "What is this thing? I don't get it."
Yeah. And then there's I do that one, and I do Ancient Greek Civilization by Jeremy McInerney or some shit.
I haven't checked that one. I don't know as much of the Greek stuff. I probably should polish up on it a bit more.
Well, I go through I hit the high points through all of history. So it starts with those two, and then it's early Middle Ages, high middle, and late middle by Philip Dayleader. I don't know how you say his name, but I think he's at Notre Dame. I think he's a professor there still, actually. Then medieval with Dorsey Armstrong. And then Renaissance, Reformation, and the Rise of Nations by Andrew Fix is a really good one.
I just interviewed because I have 2 channels. I also have a Roman Empire channel. I just interviewed my favorite Roman historian, a guy named
Petkus.
No, Dr. Adrian Goldsworthy, and he does like lives of different famous Romans.
That's cool.
His work on Julius Caesar is called Julius Caesar: Life of a Colossus, and the thing that he does, which is what I like about history, is you get more of the human interest angle, like where things about them as people. Like there's a really great book I read a number of years ago called So You Think You Know the Civil War, and it gets into all the weird things about the people. And you kind of, because I think so often we look at history and we're like, well, this happened because that happened because that happened. You don't realize, Julius Caesar made a lot of decisions he made because he's broke his entire life. Somebody like Stonewall Jackson had a shrill, high-pitched voice, used to constantly chew on lemon rinds, and always had to sit exactly upright on his horse because he thought his internal organs needed to be always aligned. So you learn of all these weird things in history, and you get a very different viewpoint on why certain things happened.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's pretty funny, actually. I loved Grant. He's such an oddball character. So after, I can't remember which one it was. I don't know if it was I think it was the battle in Tennessee, the big one, that it was kind of a comeback tour for him to some degree. And there's a picture that made the national media, which back then is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Of him smoking a cigar. So like all of the cigar companies in the North started mailing him cigars to the war front, and they had like a chest with 2,000 cigars in it. This motherfucker was smoking 20 cigars a day.
Oh my God.
Well,
that
shocking
was a raging
that he made
alcoholic
it.
too.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, and that persisted throughout the rest of his life. Yeah, there's a lot of. I like looking into the personality too. I'll definitely check this out.
Well, because when you look at
interesting.
history, I think so often we look at it as cause and effect. We forget that people are people, and they still do weird stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and I think, if you're thinking about government, thinking about who to vote for, thinking about the structure of government, one of the things that you have to do is not, like we think of power and tyranny and all this shit and abstraction, but you also have to protect it from personality to some degree, right?
I agree.
Because we're human beings and we're weak. I would say the same thing about policing. I like police.
Yeah.
I have many, many friends who are police. I have friends who are federal agents and all this other stuff. However, as an institution, our system of government is designed to protect us from them.
Correct. Not the other way around.
Right. So it's like that's how it has to be, and you have to realize, as my friend Michael Malice says all the time, they're human beings.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And
it's what most historians forget, and I think that's a big problem with most history.
Yeah, it's just a set of facts, which is informative to some degree, but it misses a lot.
Correct.
All right. Well, we got to get the fuck out of here. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah. So they can find anything about me over at jeremyryanslate.com, or if they're an entrepreneur and looking to get their brand in the right places, I have a company called Command Your Brand, and I have a great resource for them over at commandyourempire.com. And I just appreciate hanging out today, man.
Yeah, for sure. Have a safe drive up to he's going to be on Dave Landau, but it'll be out before this is. So go back and watch it if you haven't already. Thanks for coming today. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thank you all for listening. This has been Seton.